So, um, moving right along. So Daniel's question was, can you use grids of different kinds? And actually, this is a great time to segue into the difficulties of doing that, right? Because the mathematical relationship here seems really simple when you look at it as circles in a square, right? Because the proportions are going to be the same. The radius in the x direction is going to be the same as the radius in the y direction for every circle, just like it will be for every square, right? That's just a truth. So what we can do is now we can start to look at what happens if you use a different grid. And to replace it, you just basically go back up into vector, and we can drop in a different grid here. So I guess let's keep it a little bit on the simpler side, and we'll move into a rectangle. And the thing you need to be aware of now with the rectangle is that it's slightly different than the square grid, right? Because now we not only have the size of the grid and the cell count in the x and y direction, but we have a size in the x direction and a size in the y direction. So keeping things pretty simple here, I'm just going to copy all three of these sliders down and make a copy of the bottom one, because now I know I need 4 sliders. And I'm also going to just turn all these off. Whoa. I just turned them off. I selected them all like this. I did a middle mouse click button. You go to disable preview. Yeah. So that just hides the information. It keeps it there for your reference, but it hides all the extra information that we did in the previous exercise. And sometimes you'll find that I'll actually group this whole kind of segment and name it something. So I'll call this, square grid exercise or something. Okay. Yeah. How many of you guys are note takers? Okay. So I just want to throw this in here because I just thought of it now. For those of you who are like really into notes, there's this thing called Scribble, and it just allows you to drop in sort of just a text-based annotation anywhere in the sketchpad, so to speak. So if you go under params and under, I think it's under utility, yeah, and you go to this thing right here, it's called Scribble. You can drop it in, and it says double click me, and you double click it and you can type whatever you want to type, right? So you can say like this definition is to map circles radii to square grid size, something like that, and you can put that down in there and stuff. So that's just for any of you guys who are going to, do notes and stuff. You can also write with this little pen up here. So if for some reason you like to circle things, or you want to, I don't know, say circles, and then put that here, and then say grid size, and whoosh, you could do that too, if you're really into notes. That's all. Anyway, so back down into the rectangle. So we just start mapping all these in. And just based off of what I already had here, I've got, I'll do it that way, I guess. So now I have a rectangular grid. If I, take the same information, so let me just kind of copy this all down, because I'm going to manipulate it, but I selected all 4 of those, and I'm copying it down here, and now I'm going to put the cell in there. The difference here is that when I try to replace the radius, I have to pick one of the sides that I want to map it to. So if I map it to the shorter radius, then I can get it to, touch at the tangent in one direction only. It's essentially all you have there. So, I've actually never looked for the ellipse tool. I've never used it. but let's do it. Why not? So the adaptation here is with a rectangle, you then have to use a different geometry, right? Because it's not a circle anymore, it's actually an ellipse. Do I need to pause for a moment for you guys to catch up?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pause. All right, guys, so like I said, we have circles here, and because now we have a rectangle, we actually have to make an elongated circle, which is really an ellipse, right? So now we're modifying the geometry that we're applying because the rules have changed. So I'll take off the circle, and now I'm going to go into curve primitive and go to ellipse. Okay, so ellipse asks me for a base plane, and then it also asks me for radius 1 and then radius 2, right? So you're starting to see the differences now between, the information that you have available, what the rule sets are between the geometries you're creating, and how you have to look for alternate methods of actually creating the geometry that's going to fit, right? So I'm trying to kind of preface in the future, we're going to be using a lot of alternate methods to get things done rather than, just trying to create something with the same rule set every time. So anyway, we're going to put the ellipses on all of the points again. And so the native radius is 1 for both 1 and 2. So that means that it looks like a circle right now. But what we're going to do is map it to size x and size y. So radius size x is going to go here. Radius size y is going to go there. And so you'll notice that we have exactly the same problem that we had before with the circles, where the radius is now the overall length of the cell instead of half the length of the cell. So we take the R1 value and change its expression to x divided by 2. And we do the same thing with the R2 value, expression, x divided by 2. And now you have ellipses mapped into the grid instead of circles. So what questions do you have?
Could you have just used ellipses instead of the circles in the first one?
You could.
And it came out exactly the
Yeah,
same?
that's a good question. Yes, you could have. So the only difference is if you do that, let me just disconnect them all. Turn these off. Turn these, whoops, on. I forget what I'm doing here. Oh, that. On. So, if you do the ellipses on the square grid, you're just going to have to plug it in twice. So basically, you're going to get the grid size in the R1 direction, and you're also going to plug the same thing into the R2. So that'll work too. My suggestion, though, is my advice to you, though, is that I would pursue the simplest form of geometry as possible. The goal that I have in mind in saying that is that you want to eliminate as many variables that could go wrong as possible. So if you can use a circle, use a circle. And then when you find out you need an ellipse, use an ellipse. Okay, so let's see. Go back to this preview. Yeah. So, are there any other questions about what we've done here so far? Okay, so make sure you're saving your files, and remember, you have to save both. Well, no, actually, for this one, you don't have to save the Rhino file because we haven't modeled anything. So don't worry about the Rhino file. Just save the Grasshopper script. This one I called Week 1, Day 3 Grid Instruction. You could call it the same if you want, but feel free to use your own naming convention. Yeah, so I'll hang out with you guys until you've completed that and you've got your ellipse mapped in, and then you're free to go for tonight. Okay, and I'll see you all tomorrow.